Once upon a time there was a worried man, and he worried about everything. And when he had nothing to worry about, he worried about that, so he figured out something to worry about. Very inventive when it came to things to think about with stress and tension. Worried about everything, the future, the past, about himself. But he'd had some small insight over the years. He'd heard somewhere, he came to a class one time, where he heard that worry is self-defeating, it's unnecessary, it's a substitute for true living. And that idea kind of grabbed him where he lived, that worry was a substitute for true living. So he said, I'm going to investigate for myself and see whether worry is essential, or whether I'm just engaging in one self-defeating thought and feeling and action after another. I'm going to look into the whole thing, just investigate it, because I'm suspicious that I'm doing something wrong. The opposite of what I've been telling myself all these years. I've been telling myself that I'm right. I suspect I may be wrong, and I'm going to prove it. So he looked around for a teacher or a school, someone who could explain the process of worry to him. Wherever he went, all he found was worried teachers. And he could tell, nervously picking up a cigarette while they were talking to him, or looking at the watch and wondering about his lunch. He could tell that the therapist was as worried as he was. He could just sense it. And that worried him. Because if you can't find someone to tell you how to get rid of worry, what are you going to do? But he heard, and he didn't know where he heard it, but he heard the information that there lived a man somewhere on a vast mountain who knew the answer to worry, who had cured himself of all self-concern. And that's all he knew. This man lived on a mountain, and that he was called a scribe. Well, he knew what a scribe was. A scribe is someone who writes things, who scribbles, author or teacher perhaps of some kind, but he was called a scribe. So he got in his car one morning and went out to the edge of town, parked it, looked way in the distance, and there was this huge, huge mountain, miles and miles high and 50 times as wide. It's an enormous mountain with green bushes all covered with trees. And his heart sank, because even if this scribe who could cure him of worry, tell him how to be cured of worry, even if this scribe lived there somewhere, how was he ever going to find him within a reasonable time, within 5 years even? An enormous mountain. And maybe it was on the other side. He knew it would take years of work, perhaps, to find this man who could help him. But his desperation was a goad enough for him to try. He had nothing else to do with his life worthwhile, and this sounded worthwhile. Just simply go and see what happens. So he got back in his car, he drove to the foot of the mountain, and he saw what he knew he would see, which was 20 or more trails starting up at the base of the mountain, one over here, one there. And he could look up and see the faint outlines of them. And it was steep, and it was slippery, and it was rocky. And there were no cafes along the way. So he just started off at the first trail that he came to. And he had a little equipment with him. He had a canteen of water, and he had binoculars to help him search around. So he started up the trail, twisted and turned, and he slipped and fell, and occasionally he sat down and rested a little bit. This went on all morning and into the afternoon. And after a while, he noticed at a distance through his binoculars that there were other people doing the same thing he was. And he was curious if indeed they were doing the same thing he was. So he just watched them, and he sensed that they were. They were trying to find the scribe, the supposed reputed scribe themselves, because when they came to a fork, he observed, they paused a little bit and looked at the upper trail and the lower one, and usually took the lower one because it was easier. But he knew they didn't know what they were doing there exactly or where they were going. So he finally came face to face with one of these other people he'd seen on the trail. He was going west, and the other person was going east. And it was a man, and they stopped to talk a little bit. And the other man, the stranger, said, yes, I've heard of this scribe too, and I'm looking for him. And the worried man said, well, so am I. And the stranger said, hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we join forces? Why don't we join together? Two are better than one, two heads are better than one. Join forces and help each other, get some little plan. You cover a certain area, I'll cover another area, and then we won't duplicate our search. And the worried man thought about it a little bit, and he made a pretty quick decision on that one. Because he had heard of things like that, and he'd experienced things like that before. And he knew enough about human nature to know that when a man suggests sharing, he usually means, I want to try to get some advantage while appearing to be giving you something. So it wasn't much of a problem with him. He said, no, thank you. I prefer to walk alone. I prefer to search alone. And he noticed, of course, a little bit of annoyance on the man's face, and they parted company. So he searched the rest of the day, found nothing, had only covered a very, very small area of the enormous mountain. Went home, came back next morning, started all over again. This time, after a while, he met a very pretty girl along the path. And there she was, sitting on a rock, and she had her canteen of water and a little lunch, and she was seated there waiting, resting a little bit. And they instantly recognized that they were both trying to do the same thing, which was to find the scribe. So he sat down on the rock alongside her and had a nice friendly conversation. Once getting over the initial strangeness of two strangers suddenly meeting, which is a natural thing, they talked very easily and casually, and he was hoping that she would suggest that they travel together. She's a very pretty girl, and he thought maybe there'd be a romance too. So he was delighted when she did suggest, why don't we travel together to find the man, the scribe, if he actually exists. We can help each other. And he almost went for it, because being a reasonably young man, he had sex on his mind a good deal. And, this was easy. A man can tell, he looks at a girl, he can tell by her attitude whether she's willing or not. And he knew that he'd have sex with her eventually. Just in time, he remembered his past life. He'd met girls before. Just as he'd met men before. And he knew that after a while he was right back where he started with his worry. And he knew that he had to follow a higher path than that. So he was very nice to her, and he politely thanked her. And he said, no, I want to search all alone, thank you. So he went his way, searched the rest of the day, nothing, found nothing, went home. And over the next several months, came back whenever he could in the morning, searched all day, looked through his binoculars, saw nothing, found nothing, except a few rabbits and squirrels and birds and a few other people. And then one day, another man came along, and they fell into a conversation. And this man had a very exuberant, happy look about his face. And he said, yes, I'm looking for the scribe, but I'll tell you something, worried man. I have found lots of teachers in the past, and one of them gave me a study course, 20 lessons. And I've gone through these lessons, and they've helped me enormously. Maybe you've noticed how cheerful and what a positive banner I have. I'm a real positive thinker after reading this study course. And the worried man looked at him, and he said, well, he's sure cheerful. At least he looks cheerful on the outside. And then the positive thinker said, no, since I have conquered this course, since I understand it thoroughly and have no further need for it, I'd be glad to sell it to you for 1/2 the cost. You can have it for $50 if you like it, and I'll do the same for you, what it did for me. Well, by this time, the worried man had searched so long and was tired, he fell for it. So he bought the study course for $50. Took it home eagerly, could hardly wait to sit down, put it out on his table, turned on the lights, opened the study card, real excited, hoping that the whole world would change while he was sitting there. Because the positive thinker was pretty positive in his sales message. He looked at it, and he read the first paragraph, and he didn't understand it. And already he was disappointed. Then he read the second paragraph, and he didn't understand it. He read the third paragraph, didn't understand it. And he said to himself, bye-bye $50. He knew there was nothing in there at all for him, and he'd fallen for it again, as he'd fallen for it so many times before. Back to the mountains. Eventually he met another woman. And guess what this woman was selling? Spices and herbs. There are many teachers who teach that the inner will change the outer. I'm telling you that the outer will change the inner. These are magic spices from far off Polynesia. Buy some of these spices, it'll change you. And you know, that appealed to him too. There's few things more attractive to faulty human beings than to think if they can just swallow something that does everything for them. So the woman was selling spices and herbs. Only $10. Look, I'll gamble $10 here. So he bought a bunch of spices and herbs. And the next day he went to the Safeway and found that he could have got them for $3. And he said to himself, I did it again. And all I get from the spices and herbs was an upset stomach. Am I telling our life story? Went back to the mountain, on and on and on, over the months. A year passed. And he even had a little chart showing the part of the mountain he'd covered. And he'd only covered 1/50 of it, 1/50th of it in a year. But there was a quality in that man that knew what the word persistence in spite of all obstacles meant. So he went back, day after day, back. Then he noticed something. He noticed that all his explorations had been in the easy part of the mountain, where it was relatively easy anyway, a narrow, broad trail sort of, and plateaus to rest on, places like that. And he noticed that he'd met all the other people in these easier parts. So he looked at the mountain in the map, and he saw that he'd never investigated a more or less accessible part, a steeper part of the mountain, over to the right. So we went over there and searched around and put up his binoculars, and his heart leaped when he's finally going around. You know how they show it in movies, a man's going like that, and then it stops like, or a variation. It goes like this and goes past it, and it stops, then it goes back. It goes back. And he stared, and his hands trembled a little bit. And there was a cabin miles and miles away. And he thought he saw a figure seated in front of the cabin, but it was a little far away. He couldn't see, but he said, hey, I think the scribe may exist after all. I'll find out. So he hiked, putting up his binoculars. Sure enough, when he's at a certain distance, he sat down. What does a scribe do? He scribbles, right? So right in front of the cabin, seated a little portable table he put out there, was the scribe, scribbling on a piece of paper. So he went up, and as he was just about to break into the clearing where the scribe was, he didn't know what to do. How do you go up to a scribe and talk to him? What's the first thing you say? Good morning. Are you feeding the squirrels? What do you say? So he just decided to walk up and see what happened. So he walked up, and he looked at the scribe, and the scribe looked at him, and the worried man started to get worried just by the way the scribe looked at him. And he asked him, the worried man said the only thing he could think of to say, he said, are you the scribe who teaches people how to abolish worry because I'm a worried man? He finally got it out. And the scribe said, yes, I am. And the worried man liked that. Hey, pretty good. He didn't give him a sales pitch. He just said, yes, I am. He even shrugged his shoulder while he said it. Very casual and unaffected. So having a little more confidence now that the ice was broken, the worried man said, well, how do I end worry? And have you ended worry yourself? And he hesitated to ask that, but he had to ask it. He had to. He had no choice. And he watched the scribe's face when he said, have you yourself conquered worry? And the scribe said, yes, I have. And he liked that too. No explanations, no details, no attempt to convince. So the worried man said, could you please tell me how to do it? The scribe said, yes, I'll tell you how to do it. And the worried man said, excuse me for asking, but could you tell me how much it would cost? And the scribe said, oh, it won't cost anything. Oh, excuse me, the scribe said. I take that back. I said it won't cost anything. It'll cost you an awful lot, but not in money. It'll cost you an enormous amount of work. And if you're willing to enter into it, I'll tell you how you can abolish all worry. And the worried man gave a sigh, and he could hardly wait for what the scribe would say next. So the scribe, who'd been casually writing as they were talking, he put the pencil down, and he said, as you know, I'm a scribe. I write things. And the way to end all worry is to find the magic word. There is a certain magic word. When you find it, all worry will vanish forevermore. No self-concern about anything anymore. And the worried man gasped. And he was puzzled by it, of course. And of course, he was just surging with curiosity. And he said, well, could I know the magic word? And the scribe said, no, I can't tell it to you, but you can find it for yourself. This is what I meant when I said you have to do the work for yourself. You have to do the exploring personally. And when you find it, all worry will end. So the scribe said, here's what you have to do. You go out from here and you just think about what I said. This is your part of it now. There's a magic word which when you discover it for yourself will end all worry. Now, if you can't find it in 6 months, come back again and I'll give you some more help. And the scribe picked up his pencil and went back to writing. And the worried man knew that he'd been dismissed. But he was excited about the prospect. If he could just find that one magic word. So he went back down the mountain, went home, and began to think of all kind of plans how he might find the one word that would solve everything. And he thought of all kinds of words, truth, reality, and he thought, well, maybe it was a foreign word of some kind that had a magic quality to it. So he searched foreign books, he searched spiritual books, because he'd been told that when he found this word, he would feel the rightness of it. He would sense the rightness of it. But he didn't sense anything that he came up with on his search. So after 6 months, after going over tens of thousands of single words and not getting this feeling of rightness, he decided he'd better go back to the scribe again. So he went back and he passed a lot of people that he met before and newcomers, and just walked right on by them. And there was one curious thing on his return trip. He was worried that he wouldn't be able to find the way back to the scribe's cabin. He had some concern. Well, do I go left here? Do I go right there? And he was terrified that he might not be able to find his way back. And let me stop long enough to tell you, you had better not be gone so long that you forget the way back, or you won't find the way back. But the urge in him to know the magic word that would abolish all worry kept him persistent. Though he made mistakes in finding the cabin, he finally found his way back. And he told the scribe, who was again seated outside, he told him, I followed your instructions, and I didn't find the magic word. Could I have more help, please? The scribe said, yes. Now for the next 6 months, you will do the following. you will know that the magic word consists of just 3 letters. Just 3 letters in the magic word. Good afternoon. And the scribe picked up the pencil and started to write again. And the worried man knew that he was dismissed again. So he went back. 3 words. What could the word be? 3 letters in the word. And he thought of the word try, T-R-Y. Certainly you have to try if you're going to abolish worry. Thought of the word let. He'd heard the phrase let go and let God. Let go of all your neurosis. He'd heard all that. But the word try and the word let didn't seem to fit. So he went through dictionaries and again religious books to see if he could find a word with 3 letters in it that would give him an impression of rightness. But it didn't come to him. 6 months passed. He went back again to the scribe on the mountain. There he was. He's outside again. And he confessed, I haven't found the word. It's been a year now. I've been searching, working hard. And the scribe said, yes, I like that. Every once in a while, someone will come here more or less accidentally. They will just accidentally find me, and they'll ask for instructions, and I give them the preliminary instructions, and that's the last I ever see them. They really didn't want to abolish their worry. They were trying to kid me into thinking they did. They came here accidentally. You came here not by the law of accident, but because you wanted to get rid of your worry. And I kind of sensed that. I sensed that you would be back. So here are your final instructions, worried man. The word consists of 3 letters, and it is a created word. It's not a word that you will find easily anywhere in a dictionary or encyclopedia or anywhere else. It's a created word, and each of the letters in the word stands for a word. 3 letters stands for a word which spell out a phrase, which make out a phrase. And it's that phrase that will do it. Now, this is all I can tell you. Good afternoon. He wanted to talk, he wanted to discuss, but he knew he was dismissed for the 3rd time. So the worried man went back down the mountain, went home. A created word, that is a made-up word with 3 letters in it, that each letter was the first word of a phrase. And when he found the phrase, he knew he could abolish worry. So he tried endless combinations, hundreds of them, thousands of them. He worked all day, he worked all night. He wanted the answer. And he worried, of course, all the time that he wouldn't find the answer. After trying 50,000 combinations of 3 letters, he thought of the 50,000th and 1. And he looked at it, and he studied it. And he began to wonder if these 3 letters made the sense that he wanted them to make. And a phrase came to him consisting of the first 3 letters. A phrase came to him. And he said, I wonder if this phrase that I have out of these 3 letters is the answer to my worry. I'll find out. So the phrase in his mind, the 3 words now were in his mind. And he said, I'll find out. I'll experiment. So he went out into the world, he went out down to his work where he worked, and he mixed with people. Wandered around through life a little bit. And every time he came into any kind of a crisis or any kind of an event or circumstance, he remembered the magic word and the phrase that was hidden into it and the meaning that was inside it. And it worked. He found out by using the magic word that he didn't worry anymore that he would lose someone or that he wouldn't make a success in life. He didn't worry that he was going to go somewhere and not know how to behave in a simple conversation. He didn't worry about anything. Wherever he went, he was in command of himself. And he took a deep breath after experimenting over a period of several weeks. And he knew he had the answer. He had the secret word. He knew the answer to worry. And that's the end of the story. We'll take a break. Take a break. Do you have any questions about the talk? Stella.
What was the three-letter word that stood for the three magic words that removes all worry?
Was that the same question some of the others you were going to ask? Yes. We will now continue with the story. There was a technical reason for that, namely the timing. The ex-worried man decided to go back to the mountain and see the scribe. And this time it was very easy. He knew the way, no doubt about it. He knew whether to turn left or right, go up or down. No hesitation at all. For one thing, his knowledge had abolished worry over whether to take left or right turn. His knowledge was higher than his indecision. So we went back, and there was the scribe seated outside again, writing, and the ex-worried man came up, stood before him. The scribe looked up, and they looked at each other. The scribe smiled just faintly, and he said to the ex-worried man, "You know, don't you?" And the ex-worried man nodded, "Yes, he knows. I know." The scribe said, "Good, we can talk a little bit. Would you like to tell me of your whole experience? I'm a scribe, and I might even put it down in a book I'm writing. So a lot of my material that goes out to the world is about how people found the truth their particular way, and it encourages and guides people, and it's a perfectly legitimate way to help others who want to get rid of all worry." So the ex-worrier said, "Yes, but first of all, Mr. Scribe, I want to tell you how grateful I am to you that you didn't give it to me the first time I came up here, that you made me earn it, that you made me work for it. Because I know if you'd just given me the word, I wouldn't have appreciated it. I wouldn't have known what to do with it. And in my vanity, I would have thought that I understood everything that you're talking about. Thank you for making me work, for finding out for myself and from myself." And the scribe nodded. The scribe said, "All right, tell us about it. What's the magic word? What does it mean?" The ex-worried man said, "After all this long time, the months of working, I finally found it. The magic word is Nick. N-I-C. Nick." Scribe nodded. "Right, that's right. The magic word is Nick. The phrase that the letters spell is nothing in common." I'd go out somewhere and I'd see people quarreling, my own relatives quarreling, and I remembered the magic word and its secret meaning, nothing in common. I have nothing in common with their quarreling. I look out at the world with all its worries and all its fightings, and I connected it, and I began to really see for myself that I personally, while all these years thought that I had something in common, I really didn't. The past, my past was a nightmare, and it haunted me. Nightmares right during the day, too. I thought of all the things I'd done. For example, I used to worry over all the opportunities I'd missed, all the opportunities to make money if I just invested it in that stock, or opportunities in human relations. Again, that girl, if I just said the proper thing to that girl at the party one time, I could have had that pretty girl in my life. I began to see that I had nothing in common with my own worries, my own regrets. Endless ways I went out and put into application the magic word of Nick. Nothing in common. The very deep understanding. We know that a word is a word, but the very deep and profound understanding that I can have nothing in common with the accusation of anyone. You accuse me. I have nothing in common with your wrath. You try to make me feel ashamed. I have nothing in common with that. I used to think so. Oh, how foolish and how gullible and how suggestible I was You could just look at me, Mr. Scribe, or the world could just look at me, and I'd fall under the influence, the devilish influence of that, and feel bad and feel hateful. Now I know, through this magic word, that the truth with a capital T has nothing in common with untruth, with falsehood. I know that light has nothing in common with darkness. It can't touch me. Only as I stay asleep when the challenge comes up can I fall under the darkness and under the horrible influence of this very evil world. Now, Mr. Scribe, thanks to your teaching, your help, and of course thanks to truth itself, when any challenge comes along, when I'm in any circumstance at all, I see you come up to me, I see someone come up to me, the boss come up to me, or a friend come up to me, or an enemy, what used to be an enemy, come up to me. And I see nothing in common. I know it! And I let the heathen rage. Thank you. I'm now unworried, and I know that I'll never worry again, because I see what it means to have nothing in common with this very sick, worried world. Let me give you a personal example. This is a true story, what I'm going to tell you now. About a year ago, I was giving a talk in the Los Angeles area. And I arrived early, fairly early, and it was already dark. And I parked my car on the curb fairly close to where the meeting hall was. And after a while, I was going in and out of the building, getting things set up. I came outside, and it was very, very dark night, no moon or anything, couldn't see hardly at all, even it was away from the street lights. So the street was very dark. And I went to my car and was getting some papers out or something. And as I was standing there, facing the door of passenger side of the car, from across the street came a voice, out of the darkness, across the street, somewhere in other cars parked over there, a voice that called my name, Mr. Howard. And being dark and I couldn't catch the direction of it, I just perked up a little bit, waiting for it to repeat itself, and it called out again, Mr. Howard, come on over here. I couldn't see, couldn't understand, could have been in back of me for all I know, because it was so dark and confusing. And the voice said several times, come on over here. I remembered the magic word. I remembered. Now, please, get the connection. It's a little thing. I know that. Don't you dare think that you have anything in common with a coward who stands in the darkness and tells you to come on over. See, you get the application. There's the physical and there's the psychological, right? It was a man's voice. He was standing in the back of a panel truck, the best I could see. And he said, come on over here. I wasn't about to go over there for a number of, the first instinctive reasons. The physical body says, don't you go over there in that dark there. The nuts are loose in this world. Do you see the news? The nuts are loose. So I wasn't going to go over there tonight. And then there was the psychological reason. Never obey a voice like that. I have nothing in common with what you're asking me to do. If you want to talk to me, come on over here and go on inside and talk to me. See these miserable little cowards. Oh, okay, I didn't obey the voice. And then I started to go inside the meeting, which was fairly close to starting time. And as I walked up the steps of the hall, from across the street came a stream of curses out loud directed at me. See? See? Curses and obscenities, using my name and then using some curse word, some bad word, evil word. As I disappeared into the hall, that dark voice was still screaming at me. See? I didn't obey his sick command, which he would call a request, to go over there and see. I have no idea what it was all about. I have no interest in what it was all about. I have no interest, and you shouldn't have any interest at all in people who behave that way. Or even in people who appear to be courteous, and they come up to you and they smile. You have to see it. You have to see the difference. The magic word. And I will guarantee you, if you will take this as more than just a little story and illustration, and you will remember N-I-C, Nick, N-I-C, nothing in common, you will begin to separate from all these attractions, all these false appeals from the world. And I will tell you, as a fact, that you don't have anything in common. And you work with it till you see it for yourself. And what liberty and what lightness.
Vernon, could you say just a little bit about courage and how one can improve theirs?
Now listen real deeply. Real courage, authentic courage, which the world knows nothing about, but which you can know, consists of not caring what happens to you at the hands of truth, because you've seen so clearly what already has happened to you at the hands of falsehood. Courage is a cold, deliberate dive into the ocean, not knowing what's down there, what you're going to meet, but the particular ground that you leaped off of has become unbearable. You leap off of that cliff into the water, maybe even screaming with terror. That's all right. You're screaming with terror back up on that cliff. And the use of the term cliff in itself is very significant. What's beyond a cliff? Nothing you can walk on as you have walked on before. Look, you started 5,000 miles back away from the cliff on what you called solid ground. And that solid ground turned into earthquakes. You passed by volcanoes that erupted. You met hostile natives, vicious animals. And you went up to the point, to the edge of the cliff, where you clap your hand to your forehead and you say, this is what this land is all about. I'm always being attacked and have to attack back. It is not a state of courage to fight back when you've been attacked by this world. It's actual cowardice to fight back. Courage means you've gone through all these experiences. You've come to the very edge of the cliff, and all you see down there is that cold ocean. And your imagination brings up all the fears and terrors you think are down there. Where did you get your idea of what that ocean is going to be like? Come on now, think with me. There's only one place that your imagination could have picked out all these fears. If I go down there, you say, listen to what your mind is saying as you come to the edge of the cliff. Your mind says, what's out there is another pack of fierce natives going to attack me. What's down there is another pack of lions ready to go after me. What's out there is a new kind of an earthquake. Who said so? I'll tell you who said so. Your own experiences, your own ideas, your own automatic fears, taken from all your experiences 1,000 miles back. So when you get up to the edge of the cliff, all you have known is a lack of courage. All you've known is quarreling, biting back. So when you get to the edge of the cliff, and look at the horrible position you're in. But you're in a beautiful position, not like those people who have stayed back there. They have never, ever allowed themselves to come to the point where they're at the edge of the cliff, where they can't go forward and they don't want to go backward. They want to stay where they are. They're not going to go through all these horrors of society, of civilization, inner and outer. They're not going to go to the edge of the cliff. They're going to stay away from it. Because they sense, by the way, that cliff is out there. And they want nothing to do with it. Because when you get there, you can no longer hide what's going on inside you. All those people living back in those towns and cities and working in the factories and living in those homes, their conspiracy of silence has worked perfectly. They have agreed among them in the home, in the family, among relatives, among political groups, among religious groups. They have agreed to call the land they're in the right land, the only land. The land where if you huddle together, you won't be frightened. But they keep saying, you won't be frightened if you stay here with us and don't venture near the end of the cliff. They say, you won't be frightened if you stay with us. And then they lie about the fact that they lie and say, we're not frightened. They believe their own lie. They believe their own beliefs that everything is all right, and it isn't all right. A person who has gone through it all and says, this is where the lie stops, which is the theme of this class, by the way. And they pass through more volcanoes, pass through more prides of lions, I believe it's called, packs of lions. When they go to the edge of the cliff, oh, what a temptation there is at the very start to say, why did I listen to something other than my friends? Why did I listen to people? Why did I listen to another voice, rather, that said there's something else besides the family, besides the religion, besides the government? You don't know what suffering is. You don't know what 100% terror is. But if you have courage enough, as the gentleman asked about courage, if you have courage enough, you can find out what it is. You want a beautiful experience? You want a reviving, refreshing, magnificent experience? Become 100% frightened and have no idea as to what to do next about it. That means you're right on the edge of the cliff. When you're there, it's too late to have ideas. It's too late for you to try to lie to yourself and say, well, maybe there's something back there in that land in back of me that I haven't tried yet. Maybe there's a new religion or a new psychological or philosophical group I could try. Or maybe there's a person that could help me, that could save me. Or maybe there's a new girlfriend or a new boyfriend. Some new involvement, some new excitement. Maybe I could take up some kind of a sport. Or maybe I could develop a network of new inner dreams. It is horribly beautiful to no longer be able to lie and believe it. At that moment, that crisis moment, the greatest crisis that you or any other human being could ever have, at that moment, you know there's only one thing left to do, and it has nothing to do with your past beliefs. It has nothing to do with your ideas of protecting yourself. To the contrary, you understand that you can't protect yourself anymore. There's no way to hide back there. There's no hideout left. And you know that because you've tried them all. You've gone back there. And then you said, I'm not going back there anymore, and you go back there anymore. You go back and back and back 1,000 times, 10,000 times, until it occurs to you with shock and shame how stupid you've been all your life to always go back to yourself. That's who you always went back to when you went back to that new group, to that new organization, to that new person, to that new experience. You always went back to yourself, but here at the point at the edge of the cliff, you're standing there and you can't find a self to go back to. You stand there and tremble for a long, long time. And you stand in place and tremble because for the first time in your whole life you don't know what to do. Well, what do you know? For the first time, I am alone. I have no one to turn to, not even myself, because I am not here. I sense it. I don't understand it fully. But it's beginning to dimly get through my mind that I can't consult me because there's no me to consult. And understanding flows very fast at this point. You understand why you got the wrong answers. Whether you consulted yourself or someone out in that world. The reason you got the wrong answers is because that's all that exists in yourself and out in the world. Are all these falsities, all these blanks that you called full, all these empty spaces. Now you know what you have to do. What you have to do is simply stand there and see what comes to you. You made the move before. Every time you get near the cliff, you turn around and ran back as fast as you could. Going into what? Going into the self-pity. Going into the self-reference, self-consultation, self-tears, self-hostility, hating yourself, for example. You knew what to do. That's where you ran to, and you see how clear it is to you now that you ran to yourself every time. Now with clarity, you stand there on the edge of the cliff, and you look around for some place to go to, and there's no place to go to. You have stopped running. You have stopped being the aggressor in your own salvation. You have stopped looking for answers. You have stopped saying in your mind, if I do this, I'll be okay. And then you remember you've said it 10,000 times and you weren't okay once out of the 10,000. Now the clarity, it's just as clear as the air here in this room. What you have to do is stand there and do nothing at all. Now you're able to do it because you see, you understand. You couldn't do it before because every time you ask yourself, what should I do? You got an answer from yourself and you did it. And you went back into delusion. And you went back into great pain and great confusion. You wandered around for another several months, another several years, always quite sure that this new experience was going to do it. Here you are standing on the edge of the cliff now. You understand clearly after all these years of doing the wrong thing, you understand clearly that you can't do anything to save yourself. You never have, and you understand that you never will. You will never know what to do to save yourself. And the first instance or two that this thought came to you, it was horrifying. because your automatic reflexes are still working. And you say to yourself, well, if I can't save me, who will? If I can't find the answers in my own mind, where am I going to find them? You'll even quote wrongly, and you'll say, well, everyone says you're supposed to depend on yourself, so I'm only following what is the right rule. I'm depending on myself. And yet you understand how you twisted that rule, how you didn't really understand it. And so now you're standing there with no one to turn to, and after a while, the fear of not knowing what to do fades, goes down, down, down. Because you see something. You understand all those little bits, those little flashes of information that you got at a class, that you got out of a book, that came through your mind, that filtered in after a while. You begin to understand what it means that you can't save yourself because there's no one there to be saved. There's no, you can fill in your name there. There's no Mary or Bill or anyone to be saved. And you fill in your own name, you see that person didn't really exist. He couldn't save himself up to this point, so there's no Savior there. There really isn't. So if there's no one there to be saved, what am I doing thinking about being saved? What am I doing rushing around anxiously trying to solve a problem? Well, what do you know? What do you know? There was no problem all along. Except one. I thought I existed as a person who had a problem which had to be solved by someone else or by my own intelligence. After all this over a period of time, remember, you're not standing on the edge of that cliff for a few minutes or a few hours, but for a long, long time. And you will watch yourself, if you can watch yourself. You'll watch yourself, to use a physical illustration, you'll watch yourself sway back toward the world a little bit. And then you'll watch yourself sway back away from the world and out toward that ocean there a little bit. And you'll look toward the ocean. And all your imagination will come up with visions of all the fierce things that must be out there. So you sway back and forth and back and forth. After a while, you have another strange, marvelous, unique experience while standing there, which is this. Not moving yourself anymore, because you have learned to remain still and not try to solve a problem, because you've understood that there's no problem in the first place to solve. Being very still, in that stillness comes a new action. This new action is not coming from the you have known, the you have identified, the you that you have labeled as strong, wise, capable, and so on. But there's an action that instead of originating with your own intellect or with your own feelings or coming from your own experiences in the past, there's a new action that comes from somewhere you know not what, and yet you sense where it's coming from because you know it's not coming from you. And this new action says one word. It says leap. When it says leap, the courage to leap goes with it. You couldn't leap if you jumped off that cliff with all your ideas of what you're going to find down there. You, in your old nature, are deceiving yourself that you're jumping, and you're not jumping at all. And you will indeed, in your delusory leap, meet all those monsters down there. And then, if you're not careful, you'll do what millions of human beings do when they've met the new monsters. They thought they'd leaped out into the ocean. No. You've leaped back the other way, calling it a daring leap. And you'll call yourself religious now. Or you'll call yourself a great businessman. Or you'll call yourself spiritual. There are 1,000 labels that you put on yourself to prevent yourself seeing that you have no courage at all. But if you do it right, if you stand there and relax, and you utter a new kind of prayer, you'll have this authentically new experience. And the prayer is this. The prayer is, I'm going to stand here and not move a muscle, not think a thought, not feel a feeling. I'm going to stand here and not do anything just to see what results from it. That is a prayer. And I'll tell you what will result from it. What will happen will be a new movement that takes you over, that begins to think for you in a new way, feel for you in a new way, begins to act for you in a new way. A new force, a new power that comes down and takes over your life so that you don't have your old life anymore. You don't have all these thoughts and feelings anymore. But now you're being directed, you'll understand what this means. You're being directed from a higher source, not from the low source of our own intellect, of our own demands, but from something very high up there. And among the qualities, to continue with your question, among the qualities that will come to you is a very natural kind of courage. It isn't yours. How can it be yours when you've never ever had courage? How can you claim courage as yours when there's no claimer there? And there isn't. So there is a courage which is real, which is authentic, which is truly spiritual, which descends from up there and comes down. And you understand that it isn't yours, and yet it is at the same time, and there's no contradiction there. You're saying it's yours because you have to use words to describe it, talking to yourself perhaps in an awakened sort of way. So this courage becomes yours, and when it is yours, what an effortless and what an easy thing it is to leap. Not once a day, 50 times a day. You take the leap off in order to explore what the ocean is like. You dive into it 50 times a day. And when you get down there may be parts of you that says, oh, what monsters are down there that are going to devour me. You say, look. Now I've studied this whole thing, and I know I'm scared. I know it. I'm terrified at what I'm going to meet when I plunge into that dark water down there. I'm going to do it anyway. So you leap off and you get down in the water. And every time you get down there, 50 times a day, you swim around a little bit. You look around. You don't see any monsters down there at all. You don't see any fierce creatures. You don't see people coming up in a canoe with clubs. You swim around. It's pretty nice. Nice little bay there, peaceful. Rocks there, you climb up in the rock, sit for a little bit, dive off again, look around. But you see, I'm using an illustration, and sometimes I have to cut into it to make the spiritual lesson clear. And here goes. You swim around, you see nothing. It's very nice. Nice warm water, pretty, enjoying yourself. But there's a flat rock there, and you climb up to rest for a little bit, and you climb up on the rock, and pretty soon your eyes get a little dim, And you relax a little bit. Now I guess I'll stretch back a little bit. So you lay down on the rock and you go to sleep. And in your sleep you dream of all the terrors again. You've gone back to the old land in your imagination. You're going to have to leap off again to break that sleep, aren't you? You're going to have to wake up, shake your head, get up off of that rock. Let's see. And you say to yourself, now this is real logic. This is real intelligence operating. You say to yourself, okay, now I remember the last time I leaped off the cliff or off a rock. I remember the last time when I jumped into the water in fear and trembling and swam around for a long while, waiting for great creatures to come and get me. They never did. I was safe there. Now I know that. I was safe. But when I fell asleep, it says you're not safe. Be careful. Better climb up to the cliff and go back to the old land. No, I'm not going to do that. Because I had a very definite, clear experience the one time I dove into that ocean that it was okay. Okay. It was a million times different from the world I left back there. It's beautiful, marvelous, a state of freedom. So I'm going to do it again. I've got a taste of it, but I'm going to do it again. So you dive off again? Fine. No fierce creatures attack you. You go up in the rock and you fall asleep again. This is how it proceeds for a long, long time. Till the point comes when you can, listen to this, how interesting this is. You could not only climb back on that rock and not fall asleep again, but you can swim back to shore, climb up the cliff, go to the top where you leaped off, and you can go all the way back 1,000 miles back if you want to where you used to be, and you still have the freedom of the sea because it's inside of you. It's your spirit. You can walk back to your family and talk to them if you want. You can watch television if you want. You can engage in life. You can engage in business. You can have friends. But you may be the only person in that land who knows that your spirit is indeed different. And that the courage that you walk around with down those dark streets and with those fierce people, the courage that is now taken over your whole system, you know you can never lose it. That's your happiness. That's your strength. You know. Absolutely, you can't lose it. Because how can truth lose itself? Impossible. How come this vast cosmic force, power that we're talking about, how can it lose itself? You are blended with it. It's part of you. And even the knowledge, the sensing that you are one with this force, that it's a part, that you're intermingled, so to speak, even that, you understand that even that knowledge can't possibly be a part of what you used to call you. It can't be a part of your old nature. Because your old nature wanted to be a power unto itself, didn't it? It wanted to influence people. It wanted power. It wanted to get. It wanted to be competitive. And look, even while you're running that ad in the newspaper to advertise your product, you're selling bread, let's say, you run a bakery and you're selling bread, and even as you run the ad and you tell people about your new honey bread that you're making and you make it attractive, or even while you're running the ad, even while you're running that, you're in another world and you know it. Of course you're engaged in business. This is how you earn a living. You sell bread. You make a profit from it. You pay your bills and you live in a house. But even while you're engaged in all these things, although nobody else knows it, your neighbor certainly doesn't know it. Your relatives certainly don't know it, and they're not interested in knowing. But no matter what you do, you know that while your social self is there in this world talking to people, you talk about the weather, you might even discuss politics with them. But you're not discussing it in the way you used to discuss it because you know there's nothing to it. All this time, the courage that is now yours, because you are different, it is just there, dominating, taking over your life, directing your life. Now look. If you have 100% courage, shall we call it cosmic courage? If you have that, which you can have, which is yours for the working, first you ask and then you work for what you ask for. And you know what the work consists of, getting rid of the egotistical self. Once you have this courage, once you understand it thoroughly, what are you going to fear anywhere in the universe? Who or what is going to frighten you? I don't care what circumstance it is. Nothing can frighten you because there's no one there to be frightened. There's no one there wanting anything outside of its own life that's now real with a capital L. All right. Now, I've described for you fairly briefly what real courage is. And in summary, it comes from a source not in your own mind, not in our own vanity. It is timeless. If your courage comes and goes, it's courage with a small c, not with a capital C. It's permanent. It is all powerful. How could there be any exceptions to truth courage? I've described it for you briefly now. Because you don't have this kind of courage, be careful you don't go into imagination as to what it's all about, or you'll get led astray by your imagination, and you'll go out and do stupid things, foolish things. And then when you get hurt, you'll wonder why you got hurt. Now what you can do to invite this real courage is a number of things. And we'll run a few of those now. First of all, and it can't be a surface admission now, first of all, you must know that you haven't an ounce of courage to your name. All you have is a certain set of habits. Like you talk up to people, maybe you'll call that courage, and that's simply a habit. Or maybe you want something from them, so you call your desire courage. And courage and that kind of desire are not the same thing. You can begin to see that you don't have any courage at all. And you begin to see that you don't even understand what it is. And you can see that practically no one in the world has this higher courage that we're talking about. What you can do is to investigate cowardice parading as courage in this world. The word courage should be taken out of the dictionary. It has no meaning as far as man is concerned. What a man does is read the word courage and then he distorts it according to his own sickness, his own egotism. You ask the average person if he's courageous, and he'll suspect the trap first of all. And suspecting the trap and yet wanting to use the situation for his own boasting, he'll say something like, oh, there's lots of situations where I'm a little timid, but I can be courageous too at times when I needed this or that situation. See, already he's distorted the word. He knows nothing about it at all. All we do is live in words and in descriptions. Here we are, putting the word courage as a label across the front of us and going around with no courage. What a contradiction, and how foolish and how unnecessary. So I will tell you in conclusion that it's a very beautiful state to have the right kind of courage, because you don't have to do a thing to keep it going. It's there. It's there for you. And what you do, for example, here's how it works for you. You walk into this room, or you go out to your office, or you go home, and the thought, the idea of how you should behave in this or that situation never occurs to you. The thought of how you're going to be brave never occurs to you. Because you see, that's the old false invented self trying to protect itself. And that's not courage at all. It's simply egotistical self-protection or self-assertion. So you never think in advance of how you're going to handle the situation when you meet that person or meet that crisis. You never think in advance because there's no need to because cosmic courage is timeless and will always be there for you if you are not there. Understand? If you fill up the space with you, it can't come in and operate. But if you know your own emptiness, then you'll have the fullness of that courage because it'll fill the empty space, won't it? All right, let's take a 10-minute break. Would you like to ask questions?
You're always saying that we do things and we say things and we don't even know we're saying them. And Wednesday night, when you made that comment after I made my comment, it just became a little clear to me that even while I'm talking to you, I'm doing things and saying things and I don't even know what I'm doing.
Did you know you went like that?
No.
See, your attention wasn't on your physical self for one thing, was it? Start there if you can't start anywhere else. We had this several years ago. Where are your hands now? What's the position of your arm? What's the expression on your face? Are you slumped down? Are you upright in your chair? Your legs crossed or straight? Start with that. Do it now. Even while I'm talking. You don't have to stare at yourself. You can tell without looking where your positions are. Now that you have that clear, go inward. What were you thinking about while Pat and I were talking, or what you're thinking about right now? Watch your mind now. A little more painful, maybe. What sour feelings did you have from the moment you entered the class here tonight? Can you tell? Can you even remember any of them? Can you be aware of the slight change in expression in your face when you maybe met Ruth or Juan or Sally? You passed by them. Were you aware as you passed by them or anyone else in the hall there of the very slightest change in your expression, maybe one that you thought you had to put on that was acceptable to the person you were passing? Were you wide awake and alert to the slightest change of expression on your face? If you weren't, then you may have put on an expression, the kind that you felt they wanted you to have, the one you thought you should have, or I'm supposed to be a friendly person, or maybe you turned away and pretended you didn't see them so you wouldn't have to go through any experience of a particular face expression. Can you watch those little things from second to second right in this room? This is what inner work is all about.
The leap that you spoke about tonight is not something that I can achieve.
See, Gordon or Rudy or anyone else can't really leap because the name doesn't want to leap. Behind the name is the identity. Behind the identity are the experiences. And behind the experiences is the whole of what you call life. And that is never going to leap. But we have to use words to express what we're talking about. So what really happens is that this sensing, look, I'll simplify. This sensing that it's the right thing to do, that is what leaps. You leap to see what happens. If you're always looking for someone to talk to, if you're looking for someone to listen to what you have to say, that in itself should reveal to you a lack of courage. Now, what would be leaping in that case? You're here in this room, and you've got something pressing you, and you want to go up and say something to someone. but you're so watchful, you catch yourself just about to go like that with your arms to get out of the chair, and your watchfulness catches the physical movement, and now you know what you have to do to be courageous. You're going to break that mechanical movement, and you're going to take your arms away, and you're going to sit back in the chair, and you're going to watch the pain it causes, because you have something so terribly important to say to that other person, for his benefit, of course. And now that other person is never going to know the richness of your message to him.
I had a real busy day today, physically and mentally, and now, even though I'm sort of relaxed sitting here, my mind is still, my brain feels very tired right now. I can't do anything about it.
I spent about a half hour agreeing with you that you can't do anything about it. When you see completely that you can't do anything about it, something will do it for you.
We have to see that this attempt to do it is terribly painful.
Attempt to do what?
The attempt to make myself secure. The attempt to achieve something.
The attempt to achieve something. I'm trying to follow your thought.
The attempt to achieve my security. The thousands of ways I do it.
Yes.
And I'm constantly doing it at my work and with my family. I have to see that that's painful before I can move in the direction you say.
Shall I tell you why it's painful? Because you know it is futile. You know it's useless. You know that nothing can come from you trying to achieve a sense of security with a family, with your own thoughts. Nothing can come from it. And we sense that, but we can't stop. As Amy said, we can't stop the mad rush. I've been telling you for years now, of course you can't. What you can do is see that you can't do anything to rescue yourself. But you won't do that. You know why, don't you? That means the end of you as your own savior, as your own hero. Truth will never permit you to be a hero in your own eyes. The devil will. That's what he goes about doing all day long, you know. Helping people, encouraging people to be heroes in their own eyes. Because he knows as long as they're doing that, as long as they're living in that delusion, they'll never find the truth that he hates so fiercely.
Every moment that I spend thinking, and I miss out on other impressions that are here in the moment, those moments are gone, and they'll never be retrieved. So it's really important that we work all the time.
Okay, it is indeed. Right now, for example. You understand, then, that we have no place to go, but rather have something to be. You can be right now, and when you are, you see there's no place to go, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to achieve, there's no enemy to defeat, there's no confusion to push away. You have it right now because you are it. Right now. And then watch in that state how all those enemies that you once feared vanish. They're not in you anymore, therefore they can't be out there anymore. They're out there for people who still have the enemy in themselves. They're not in there or out there for you anymore at all. You're making a very serious mistake, all of you. You're making a mistake of giving attention to enemies, of thinking about them, of talking about them, of feeling afraid of them, of keeping the mental movies of their face, of their actions in your mind, by running that film over and over and over again at odd moments during the day of your enemies. And notice that you have quite a few of them. You have your favorite enemies, for example. You have major enemies and lesser enemies. You have no enemies at all, not in reality. So you're making a mistake by always thinking about people in a negative way and calling them people who are causing your life to be disturbed. Your life is disturbed because you think that there are people out there who are causing your life to be disturbed. That person out there that did that horrible thing to you, that person can't do anything with your mind. You are doing it with your mind. The enemy is here, not out there. But you look at that person, maybe you see him walking down the street, and when you see that person, your mind makes a very mechanical and wrong movement because it loves excitement. You know how much you love excitement of any kind? Because it loves excitement, it sees the face and the automatic process begins, and you say, there's the feared enemy. There's the person I should hate. And then you feel a little relief because you say, for the next 5 minutes I have something to do with my life. I guess it's worthwhile after all. I mustn't cease to hate that enemy or I'll begin to think that my life is empty. Look at the sad trick you're playing on yourself. You catch yourself and you remain very still the next time you see the enemy or think about him and refuse to entertain him in your mind so that you experience the emptiness, which is the diving into the sea, and you'll see that that sea is very peaceful after all. How many of you have ever been in love? You know, huh? How many here are still in love? Kind of painful, isn't it, to be in love? Because you're afraid you're going to lose him or her. Shall I tell you something about being in love? You're not afraid of losing him or her. You're afraid of losing the sensation you feel over what you call being in love with him or her. You don't care 2 cents about him or her. It's you care about and the sensation that thinking about him or her gives you. If you cancel hate, you also cancel love. If you cancel love, you also cancel hate. Now this is love with a small L, you understand. It has no relationship to authentic love at all, which is simply desire, wanting to give your mind and feelings something to do, and also very subtly complimenting yourself on being such a marvelous lover, or you ladies' case, a loveress. And then, when the romance breaks up and the ball was over, time to change the act from the lover to the victim. Why did she do that to me? Why did he do that to me? Your mind is filled with your own stupidity and nonsense. We always have the next act of the marvelous drama called Me and Mine ready. The lover has a costume closet filled with dark clothing and lots of handkerchiefs ready for the next act called The Exit of the Lover. I once wrote down at home, I still have it as a matter of fact, a list of what I called lonely songs. How we love lonely songs. Because we are the lonely one, right? We love the feeling that goes with it. You're on.
The more I blame other people for my problems, the more my problems irritate me. And I've got to see that the blamer in me is what is persecuting me.
Okay, now you understand that, right? You'll never ever blame anyone again, right?
I quit.
Pat.
Your comment brought to mind one of your recent tidbit quotations. We can forgive those who have offended us. Now can we forgive those whom we have offended?
Do you understand that?
I don't clearly understand. Would you comment on this?
All right, you have offended someone. And you look back at yourself and you see how rudely you behaved towards someone. Oh, but I couldn't be rude. See, you have offended someone and you're kind of conscious of that. You're kind of aware of it. And then you say, well, I couldn't be rude myself. Therefore, it's the other person's fault. And I won't forgive you for exposing me to myself. You understand? That's the basis of it. I'm not going to forgive you for putting me in a position where I saw how rude I was. And of course I try to cancel it by saying I wasn't rude, you were. So I can't forgive you because every time I see you, you remind me of what I'm really like, and that's the last thing I want. The casualty figure in this class, that is, people who come here once or twice or even 10 times and then go away, is based on that. People come here and even in one meeting, they're told what they're actually like. And they can't forgive us, and they can't forgive themselves, really, for coming here in the first place, for the self-exposure.
To slow down to a stop would appear as a leap from time's point of view.
This is words, it's figures of speech, and eventually all of you are going to have to go beyond all the words that we're talking about, all the illustrations, all the figures of speech. And when you do, you will see that they're necessary for teaching and for learning. We have to communicate by using words, don't we? Eventually you will see everything wordlessly. And then you may use words and you may use illustrations, but you're doing them consciously, and you know you're using them simply to teach, perhaps to yourself even, or perhaps to someone else.
It's so difficult to conceive of seeing something and the mind not commenting. I know in my own case, I'm so used to it going 1,000,000 miles an hour that I just can't conceive seeing something and the mind being still.
All right, now, don't scold yourself when you lapse, when you comment, when you shouldn't. Don't go into self-scolding on it. Just see that it happened. And the more you see, the better for you, because the very seeing of it will begin to slow down the process of commenting. And we always comment in our own favor, don't we? What we assume is our own favor. And every time we do that, we make it worse, because we have now reaffirmed the delusion that I am I and you are you, and neither are true. Whenever a person tells you often and long what he's like, you should know that he's exactly the opposite of that. And that's a real good clue. And in some people it's very clear. In other people they're a little more subtle about it. Watch out for people who are spiritually humble, for example. Religiously humble. They're not that way at all inside. And to your sorrow, you will find it out if you're not careful. No one in the world, no one on the face of this earth will ever be able to deceive you again about their inner state if you're wide awake and you stay wide awake when you meet them. No one will ever be able to con you. You'll know they're conning you. They can be the most clever con artist on earth, and some people are absolutely skilled to the maximum in fooling other people, and you'll see through every one of them. Never, 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 never believe that any human being on earth cares for you. Nobody can care for you. They're not capable of caring for you. Only a person who's found truth can care for you, and it isn't even him caring for you. His human personality, it can't care for you at all. He would never deceive you, but billions of other people will, because they want something from you. You ladies I wonder how gullible you ladies still are in spite of all these classes. If some smooth con artist of a man comes along and tells you that he loves you, that he cares for you, he won't do it that directly. He's too smart for that. He'll do it in small ways. And because you're so lonely and scared and don't understand, you'll fall for it. Don't fall for any man, ladies. You fall in love with truth first, and no man will ever be able to deceive you and hurt you again. You've been hurt by men. I know you have, just as the men have been hurt by women. We all hurt each other. If you want to stop that, then you start paying attention to the things in this class. You'll be able to live with a man, ladies, and you'll be able to live with a woman, gentlemen, and they won't be able to hurt you anymore. Because it's your own ignorance of what they're really like that is hurting you. Nothing else. Your own ignorance of what human beings are really like. No man or no woman has any strength to give you. They don't have any comfort to give you. They have no love to give you. All they have to give you is the human counterfeit versions of it. If you want the real thing, you'll find it here.